book of laws.
Yep.
And I don't know if I was watching or if I was here. I can't remember. But I know there was a couple of questions regarding moving something to a different line in the water department.
Yes.
budget,
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And according to this, and this is the more or less the handbook for
Okay.
town moderators, I only oversee the control of how the town meeting is run.
Okay.
So no input from me, more or less. And you are just an according to what I'm reading, you're an advisory committee.
Yep.
Okay, and Janet did, called me
Mhm.
regarding the question about moving it. And I says, one of two things. You can step down as a finance committee person and then become a resident of Raleigh, stating your name and your address, and that you wanted to do an amendment to this article.
Mhm.
Okay, and have it second, and then see where it goes from there. In my opinion, and I don't know what the town council is going to say, I think it would be better if you stay as a finance committee,
Mhm.
every one of you, and get somebody else that agrees with you to make that motion and second it from the floor. And the presentation, then the finance committee can get up and make its reasoning why they want to move it, or would like to see it moved.
So the finance committee can have an amendment ready and propose that we want to do this amendment, but we have to get somebody in the audience
No,
to
you can
second
do it yourself. You're just gonna have to recuse yourself as being a finance committee person at that time.
Oh, I
That's how
see.
I'm reading it.
I
Now,
see.
I could be totally wrong,
Okay,
okay? Because you're just an advisory committee,
right.
okay?
We did an amendment last year, and I
Yeah.
can't remember who seconded it. We proposed it. Did one of us second it then?
I think so.
And I,
Just
can't-
one of
and you
us.
know what, and not,
Okay.
I was out with my back, so I couldn't even tell you, I'll be honest with you, I watched it for about 10 minutes and then the drugs kicked in. And I was, you know.
It was a great meeting.
Oh, it was a great meeting.
Yeah.
I mean, you had a great moderator, but you know, you just have to, so, I mean, I would have to look at the tape and see, you know, and that's fine. If the town council has no problem with it, you know, she's over me, you know. I'd rather do that the legal way
Okay.
than me saying something
Yep.
and then having somebody say, no, you couldn't have done it, it's illegal, we gotta go back and da-da-da-da-da.
Yep. Okay.
All right?
So we'll just have that amendment, and if we have any others, I don't know, ready to go.
Right. And I do know that I did receive did she put this here? She put a memo, an email to both Janet and myself
Yep.
about the amendment for the special town meeting article on the water department transfer from the interim loan line item.
Okay.
So, and
And I responded to that just before I came here.
This
so
was town council? Or who is this?
Debbie sent an email to me
Debbie sent it to me and she wanted it
Oh.
in writing. in
what I was
order
going to propose.
Oh,
to
What-
go to town council.
Oh, I see, to send it in
Which-
advance to town council.
Right.
Okay.
And basically all it was just suggesting that it come out of wages rather than the loan.
Yep.
But I needed to confirm what the line item was. So it's not finalized, but that's,
The
as we
gist of
discussed
it.
last week, I just typed up what we had discussed.
Okay.
so.
And without sounding like I'm saying, yeah, go ahead and do it, you're just moving money that's in the water coppers to another line item. You're not trying to take it from some other department or anything else. So, I mean, Bob, if you got anything to add? Interdepartmental transfers. But I do know, and the water department, there's the, is it an financial advisory board that's now been set up? Is that what it's
Yes.
called?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, it's a
And-
financial team.
financial team. So I think that's why you're seeing so many articles from the water department, because they're, the board of selectmen, the, a town accountant, town treasurer,
Town assessor.
town assessors.
Principal assessor. yeah.
are all trying to make everything very transparent to the taxpayers or the water rate users in Raleigh. That nothing is gonna move from X, Y, Z to A, B, C without this extras, not just the water board or within the water department. Other people, other departments in town are looking at this and saying yes or no to it. And I have to be honest with you, I think it was a good move on everybody's part. I would hope that, you know, you agree to that or not, but,
That was a great move.
I really do, I think so, yeah.
The selectmen are very pleased. I actually spent quite a few hours working with the water department on their budget this year. There was one session, we were here over 5 hours.
I remember.
And, it's hopefully come together
Yeah.
to a point where it's usable. I know there may still be a few glitches in it, and we're hoping to be able to straighten that out as time goes on. Once we get a base, and I think that was part of the problem with their budget in the past.
Yeah.
Is their base wasn't really realistic.
Yeah.
It started out with a figure, and every year it just got added to without any documentation.
Right.
And, right now we're requiring documentation. So
Yep.
we hope that we'll go forward at this point.
I will tell you that I do have a tape of, I think it's 2002 town meeting, that I'm gonna be reviewing myself just for procedures, because where I
Okay.
did not, there was no special this year, and I did not do last May's meeting, so it's like, 2 years, so
Yeah.
it's almost like, when you do that one big meal, Thanksgiving meal every year, and you go, oh my God, where's my recipe for
Right.
this? Yeah, so, so I will be reviewing so that I can make sure that everything will go in place, and I do know that, and I can't remember without checking how it was, did we just do the departmental figure, or do we do the whole at the do we do each individual, did we do like the fire chief, or do we do all public safety?
We did it at a high level.
we
so-
read-
I think it's Article 7, is it?
Right, when we go to the line items.
The omnibus budget.
Yeah,
I think last year it went very well.
was it just the subtotal, so it was,
It was basically the subcategories.
Everything that's bolded,
yeah,
Yes.
yes.
And if somebody wants to put a hold on it,
Then they would say what line it was.
they would say like department, line 15.
Right,
Or IS department,
Right.
that's what I'm looks like.
right, yeah, it's IS department line 34.
Yeah, so we would just read the IS department's total
Total
budget.
budget,
And if somebody wanted to put a hold on it and question it,
then we do that.
then they'd just
Yeah.
give us
But
the
if I
line
could,
number.
if I could just be the devil's advocate, though, I was a little bit upset because I thought some of the things went kind of fast, and somebody wanted to say something, but it went too fast and they didn't catch it. That's the downside of when you just, do snips and stuff or go quickly, because
Oh, I can take a
people,
pause. Would you
know,
rather, would you like if I,
maybe
like-
that would be a good idea then or something, because I know I felt bad for somebody that, wasn't able to stop, didn't realize that, we went through that section already.
well, I think just
You know,
explaining it in advance
Yeah.
what the procedure is to state that, say hold when the item is read. But I do believe we paused. We didn't, we
No.
didn't
Yeah, 'cause
like
we
read
broke- we
really
broke it up.
fast.
We broke it up between people, so there was a
Yeah.
pause
Well,
as
it
we
would be like,
shifted on the-
the town moderator and then the $100, but then when you hit the Board of Selectmen, you have another, like 11 lines. So it would be a total of,
Well, that's the thing. This
Total.
needs to be
this-
revised, so it has
it has to have a
subtotals.
total on
yeah,
it, yes,
subtotals,
okay.
yeah.
I can see that, so that.
So I don't know
make
if
sure that
this
Debbie-
is gonna work. If this is already gone to print.
Dealing with the,
We did not have, we're dealing with the one she gave me. It just had subtotals. We just would go Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, Board of Assessors, and
think we
then
have
the
to read the whole thing.
subtotal is, $1,081,000.
well, I think the subtotals are not for every item. But there is a-
There are some that have subtotals, because if you go to page 5,
Okay.
subtotals.
It's basically by category. then.
Yep, so then, will we do it by category? See, that's a big category. That's 54 lines.
Well, that's general government.
Okay, yep,
And then you get the subtotal for the general government. Now, you can do each one of these town moderator,
Oh,
and if somebody wants to hold that one, it's line 1.
okay, so then say the Board of Selectmen
Board of Selectmen,
would be line 2 to 12,
and if somebody says, well, I want to hold line 10,
then we could do that.
okay, and then when you
Yep.
get to the end of the category, there is a subtotal of
Of $1,081,000.
81,669.
Okay,
So I think, and Peter has a good suggestion, we just maybe hesitate a little bit. make
Okay.
sure
At the
we
end of
get
each-
somebody
Yeah.
that's-
like at the end of general government, pause.
if anybody
and
sees me moving along too, don't be afraid to say,
Yeah.
So
slow
would,
down.
Okay.
would we say, go through this and say line 1, town moderator, then Board of Selectmen, lines 2 through 12? And then at the end, say the subtotal?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do
Finance
that, line,
committee, 13
Board of
to
Selectmen,
15.
line 2 to 12, Finance Committee, line 13 to 15, Town Accountant. And then at the end, if there hasn't been any holes, and I'll say, after we read the subtotal, I'll say, there has not been any holes on these first 54 lines. Am I correct?
Mhm.
To
Now
put
it
a,
gives
to
some-
put a hold on,
Yeah.
don't they have to stand up and, or in
No,
front
they
of the
just have to yell
microphone?
hold, and then we
Oh.
just clarify what, so, let's say you yelled hold on,
Okay, so
you know,
you don't have to
weights
go up
and
and
measures.
approach the microphone, you just yell it out.
and they'll just yell out, that's how it's usually,
Okay,
but when
Doesn't
we've
you-
done it in the past, is we've read every single line item,
right.
okay? And then somebody would yell hold, so we knew that would be.
And it was
But then
very
you have to go
painful.
up.
It
Yeah,
is, it is.
But you
Right.
do,
It is.
you do hold, but then you have to go up to the, you know, and
After the
address
whole-
it.
When that,
Right.
yes, then when we go
Yeah.
back to
Yeah,
review
I-
it,
Right, yeah.
you know, like say, when I get down to this one and we finish, and I'll say, okay, I have 5 holes, line 12, line 99, and whoever had the hold on line 12, please come forward for your reasoning.
In the past, even the Finance Committee has put holes on, so that they could juggle some money around. When we had federal grants, a lot of times they would feed some of that into one of the other line items,
Yeah,
so the money would come from a different location,
yeah, okay.
so.
You know, that's
it's
a whole
not
7
Doesn't
pages.
happen as much now because we don't have any federal grants.
Yeah. So we'll ask Debbie to put subtotals on each of the bold categories,
Has
so
this
we
gone to press?
have the totals.
No, it has gone to press.
So we can't
So
have
it's-
subtotals.
So it's
No.
going to be that I will read the departments.
The category subtotal is there.
So we're
So
gonna do
we'll-
general government.
But are we doing that? Typically, we do the entire one, so I think we could just say general government, line 1. General government, town
Town
moderator,
moderator.
line 1.
Then say Board of Selectmen, line 2 to 12.
And then we get through the
Oh, so-
town hall annex, line 54, total general government, 1 million.
81,661.
Oh, I see, so we're just gonna say
Yes.
what the line numbers
Yes.
are, not dollar
Not read
numbers.
each
Dollars.
one,
Right.
who it is, and
Okay.
what
Except
the
when we get
amount
to the
is.
subtotal.
Until the subtotals.
Yeah.
Okay, because then people have the opportunity, if they're concerned about one, they can say hold.
And
And
if
they
you
know
want
it's-
to take a
Okay.
pause, when we hit the subtotals, I'll say, okay, we've done line 1 through 54. I've heard no holes, is that correct? Then we know, and then we can move on, because there's 100 and, what is there? 147.
One, two, three, four,
It's 5,
five,
5,
six,
6,
seven,
almost.
There's 8 subtotals.
Yeah, and there's, on 7 pages, so I mean, that moves it along fairly.
That'll be
Just make
even
it clear,
faster.
Joan, that, you know, that they have to say hold, or once you go by, it's too late.
Right,
You know, just so
right.
they'll know
Yeah,
that they can't
and
go back.
We will, I'll make,
Yeah, I think that was the confusion last year, that they
Yeah,
yeah,
waited to say hold till it was over, and then
Well, I think
they
the
were told to
explanation up
go.
front needs to be very clear.
Yes.
true. How we're gonna do this.
A lot of the older people that have been there before never. did
Never,
that.
never, no. And
And people feel like they need to be polite and wait till it's done and then
Okay.
speak
Right.
up, and then they feel it's too late.
Mm.
Well, that'll move it along pretty well, I think.
Yeah, I think it's
I
similar
have a
to.
feeling
Still
that-
give the
I'm
opportunity.
hoping, but
It
I
worked
think we're
well
gonna
last
run
year.
2 nights.
Oh, don't say that
I
on
know,
television.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Believe me.
We don't need any ideas like that going out.
Well, that's why if this is a big help, that's 7 pages.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's gonna knock a couple hours off the general after
It's gonna be used elsewhere.
So I think if we can get 2 of us to split up reading this and alternate between sections maybe, and then we'll split the articles between
And
the
then I'll
rest of
make,
us.
at the end of each subtotal, I'll make an announcement. I'll make some better notes, when I'm doing my review of the tape anyways.
Okay.
Sometimes it's just a question.
That's right. It's very,
Other times they wanna change the whole town meeting line.
well,
Does anybody want to volunteer right now while we're talking about it to do the reading of the omnibus budget?
I'll
In the-
volunteer.
Okay, so Jamie.
I'll share it.
Okay. Anybody else?
Please. I mean, as we know, Jack used to read every
Oh, I know.
single line. God
Yeah.
bless him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could help out.
Okay. And then we need to divide up the articles too, so.
Mhm.
Okay. So Jamie and Larry will do the omnibus. So back to the amendment then, so that Debbie sent that, Article 26 amendment off to the town?
No, I got the
Uh,
email just after 5 o'clock
Yes,
tonight,
yeah.
and I saw it before I came. I
Ah.
wrote what we had discussed last week
Okay,
and sent it off to her.
okay.
Backed, and I
So you're
think
waiting
you're
to
on, a
hear.
couple of people are on it.
Okay, I didn't
I must
see.
be on it. I got a phone message from her. I did not check my email.
Okay,
So,
so I've sent it back.
So she'll get back to you with the
Yes.
precise protocol that we need to follow, but I think it's basically what you outlined, that we can, if we vote on it as a group, we can propose the amendment, and then one of us can, as an individual, second it.
Yeah, well, I think, what I'm saying is I think you have to step down as a finance, but I want to hear what
Okay.
town council has to say. She
Okay.
may say you can legally do that.
Okay,
It says in my book that you're an advisory committee,
okay.
but it doesn't stop you from having your rights as a
As
taxpayer in
citizens,
Rutland,
yeah, okay.
okay? As any of us.
Yep.
You know, I can step down at any time as moderator if I wanted to,
Mhm.
but, you know,
It'd be interesting to get a town council opinion, because state law also governs the finance committee. So there are state statutes, and it would be, that's where it would be.
well, this is, there
Right, I
is
think
a,
it's good to get it clear.
yeah,
Definitely.
and there was, it's,
It'd be cleaner if someone else made the motion.
this one here, it says, I think it's Mass General Law, Chapter 39, Section 16. It says during the winter months, there are no harder working town officials than the members of the Finance Committee. So there's a little kudos to you.
Yeah, winter's over.
There you go. So, you know, so it's that's just, you know, it's 2 or 3, and I read it through, and I said, you know, that's why I think we really need to have Judy say something. Then that way there, nobody can bring it back to us.
Yep.
That we did it wrong and we have to redo something.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, and that believe me, there is nothing, I don't think any one of us wants to have another, that's like if we don't get some of this water stuff through, you gotta look at an expense of another town meeting.
Right.
Not a fall town meeting, another town meeting somewhere
Before July 1st.
before July 1st, that's what I'm gonna say, sometime in June, so. I don't think this is gonna be an easy town meeting this year.
Between the water and, well, other things that people have been talking about, I think it's gonna be very interesting.
The zoning, or you think, is that?
Well, I think the salary increases,
Oh.
people have been talking about that.
Hmm.
Well, I know, but I think, like we all say in fairness, we've been running this town on a shoestring for a long time,
Yeah,
a long time.
That's true.
And, you know, now I can say this, I can't say it at town meeting, but, you know, we lose good people
yeah,
to other
Yeah.
towns because they're paying
yeah.
maybe $1.50 or, you know, $2 more.
Yeah.
But on a 40-hour week, that's $80 more in somebody's pocket, you know, and that's and you know what it is? You always lose your good, hard, dedicated workers.
One of the issues we have is because the pays are so low.
Yes.
We have to take the lower people that come in. We train them,
Mhm.
and once they got that training,
And once
gone.
they've learned from us,
Yes.
then they go
Right.
somewhere else. Make more.
And that next town gets them and doesn't have to pay for the training.
Right.
that's a big issue with the police department, because we have to send them to school.
Yeah.
They have to be trained, and it's a fairly expensive process. And once they get that training, then they can apply anywhere.
Oh,
And the other towns are more than willing to pay them an extra $5 an hour, because now they don't have to train them,
Sure.
and they just go. And you can't blame them. They got a family and need to survive, so.
right.
But this was, correct me if I'm wrong, but this was presented to the town meeting last year, that this money was set aside to get a grant to look at
where we stand.
where,
Yeah.
where we stand
Right.
and how to move forward with it, so.
It
The
was.
personnel study money was appropriated
Yes,
last year.
yes, yeah, so it's not something that you're just throwing it at them.
Right.
Now, the results of
Right.
the survey and what was done, and it was done, you know, and it wasn't done by just Joe Schmo, it was done by Maya, right? And, so they,
SRH, I think, was the company.
yeah, so. We'll
Yeah, it
see.
wasn't done in-house. I mean, we wanted
Yes.
to make sure that that wasn't the case, so there'd be no.
Yeah, it was independent, and it showed that, you know, we were underpaying people. So to bring, you know, most everyone up to everyone up to the right levels, you of course bring some people up that maybe don't deserve it, but you're bringing that position up.
Position, not the person, that's the other
To-
thing, it's
That
not
is
the
correct.
personality, it's not the person in the position, it's the position. And I do believe, last month I read, it's either West Newbury or Merrimack is doing the exact same thing. They're doing a study to bring, wages for their town employees up to where they should be.
The only question I have is if we can afford it, you know, I mean, if there's, because we're level funding a lot of other areas of the operating expenses, so that's my concern that, you know, we happen to have a good year because we had money left over from the snow emergency from last year, plus the school, Triton School came
Right,
in
came in, yes.
$180,000 less than what we expected, so that provided us with a cushion, you know, so,
Not being somebody from the personnel board, but I think you have to look at, this is the year that you hold, like you say, the operating expenses and you give the wages increase and it's in place and what it should be for the next steps, and then hopefully, you know, we pray that we get a good year, tax base, houses are selling, you know, different things are, hopefully the economy, I thought this year was gonna be better, so let's hope that next year will be better.
And actually, we did bring the rates up for the expenses last year.
Yes,
We
so,
did give them an increase last year on the expenses.
I think it would be easier to present or to accept if the next, like I can understand bringing the position up to where it needs to be, but that once the position's up, I think that future steps should be tied to performance. So the
Well,
next step
that's
should
the-
be to get
that's the
merit
idea.
and
Yeah.
get reviews in place
Yeah, that's the idea.
rather than have it automatic.
Before, things were working not too bad. It wasn't really the best on the old system. But when the economy went the other way, now there's nothing to base it on because the price index came down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it was based on. So we really needed to get that straightened out. That's why we got behind on the way we
but
did.
union positions, you can't, it's based on steps, so.
But this isn't
It's
union.
not performance.
Right.
There's union positions, though, I know we're talking, there's non-union and there's union positions. The union positions, so their people are gonna we have like $500 and some odd $1,000 set aside for the union
Right.
positions too, so they're gonna, so that's the other element, is that the union's gonna get, you know, get stepped up, and then theirs is not based on performance, theirs is just a step increase every year,
Well, it's a negotiation.
you know?
it's negotiations. For
Mhm.
Right.
unions, it's negotiated.
But for the non-union, I believe there's a cost of living increase plus a step increase. So the cost of living is what it is, but I think any step increases that the town needs to work towards merit increases and having them tied to job performance.
Exactly.
And then
Mhm.
that's,
And that's what-
then you're not paying for the position, you're paying for the
performance.
performance of the
person
employee.
in there.
And that's what we got a grant for, right? And Debbie's working toward
Yes.
ensuring appropriate job descriptions and some way of measuring your performance to the description. So I think we're moving in that
Right, and
right direction.
but,
So, yeah, to articulate that would
Right,
help
as
justify.
it's discussed
Yep.
at town
Yeah,
meeting.
no,
I
that's a
think
good point.
Well, somebody from the personnel board will most likely have to get up and present that. I hope he's not watching TV tonight.
Maybe we better hope he is watching TV.
So I'm, you know, continue with your meeting. You have any other questions for me? I'll sit as long as I can and go over some of the warrant with you, or,
Do you guys think we're good?
Yeah, we're
Okay,
good.
I think we're good then.
Just-
Thank you, though.
okay.
So next we have minutes to approve, and we did approve the 3:20 minutes already last week. So, 3:27 is up. Did anybody have any feedback on the 27th?
Do you have the most recent minutes? Because I did, I don't
This is
have
the
mine with me.
27th,
Is that the most recent?
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I had reviewed it, I didn't see any changes.
They're fine with me.
They passed Larry's scrutiny.
Oh, that's the most recent, right?
Excuse me.
Oh, it's my
That's
packet.
fine.
You're an editor in a past life, right? It's a good thing.
Yeah, right.
This is my copy.
I think this is your copy too that I borrowed,
Oh.
right? Or do we have it in our?
She put that in the packet.
Oh, okay.
So,
I'm not fussy, but my thing I just said at the end about Trenton School help with the budget was, I don't know, I was a little bit more, I said a little bit more than that, but that, I don't know if it's, you just,
what page are you talking about?
Oh,
page 3, the last sentence before your name comes on, that I stated that the Triton School helped with the budget.
Which
in
one
a
are you
sense-
on, March
April
27th?
on April
On the
Oh.
April 9th one, yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
See, down here, the last thing down here.
Yeah,
So-
I'll have more, Peter.
Well, I don't care, I just mention it because everybody seems to,
I'll have,
Talk
I'm
about the
trying
minutes
to break it down if you go looking at.
well, can we go in order, because I think the 27th are pretty good. So, do I have a motion that we approve the March 27th minutes as written?
I'll make that motion.
Jamie, do I have a second?
Second it.
Larry, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, approved. So then, we don't have the 4-3, and Linda is watching the EMC.
No, I did.
Oh, you did
I
already,
watched
okay.
the whole thing. And I
And-
did all the notes, and now I have to type
So-
them up. I was so proud of myself.
So for the Tuesday, April 9th minutes, I did have some edits. On the first page, under the water department, the second sentence, she is explaining about the wage line and unemployment compensation and that it comes out of the expense line. I think we want to, she was saying it used to come out of the expense line, and now they put a specific line for unemployment compensation.
So,
It used to come out of the expense line.
okay.
So that was one. Then in the library section, page 2, says the director goes on explaining how the numbers on the budget does not match because the Board of Trustees has to calculate some numbers. I'm not sure what that related to. I don't remember the numbers. Oh,
That's okay. I can go back and look at that meeting in my notes.
I know I had raised a question on the numbers of the front page didn't match what was appropriated, and she explained it was because those figures included money that they raised and donated, so they wouldn't exactly match the appropriation. So there was no question on the numbers not matching that I recall. She explained everything.
Okay.
So you can just strike, I think you could strike that sentence. But then there was a line, the library is required to add 16%,
Spend.
to spend 16% of the budget towards
On materials.
expenses, right?
Right.
On materials.
So maybe just reword that 16% on materials.
Okay. What page is that? Page 2?
That was
Two.
page
Page
2,
two,
the
okay.
library discussion. So
Yeah.
instead of the library is required to add 16%, they're required to spend 16%
Well, I
of the
think what
budget.
it's saying is that in the, in addition to the increase in the hours,
Mhm.
there's also an increase to library, 16% to library materials based on these salaries.
Mhm.
But I think,
Based on, okay.
16% is required by state law.
right,
Right.
If they don't spend the 16%, then they're not accredited.
Right, 16% of the overall budget has to be spent on materials.
right, and since they're adding salaries here.
Yep, they have to
increased
also
it.
increase the expense, yep.
Yep.
And then under discussion on page 2, the bottom, it says Bob Snow also stated that the BOS has formed an investigation.
Board of Selectmen.
Oh, Board of Selectmen. Who is that? Okay, gotcha. Okay.
He's the boss.
Yeah, okay, that's good, never mind. And then.
I think
Okay, go ahead.
on that discussion, the Finance Committee asked Debbie Egan if the town is implying to go. And I think that should be, intending or, but some other way.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Considering.
Yeah.
And then the next sentence, Debbie Egan stated the article on the warrant is to transfer out of the interest fund. I think that should be more clearly stated. It was the water department interim loan interest,
Yeah, there was a line number for that too.
163.
63.
Where are you?
It's the one I'm holding
Where you
here.
looking?
Everybody's
Right.
memorized 163.
You want to put page?
No, you're still on.
Still on
Comes up in our
You're on
discussion.
different.
What?
Page 2,
Yeah, so instead of out of the interest fund, it's the water department interim loan fund, and it's line 163.
where,
Where it says Debbie Egan stated that the article on the warrant is to transfer out of the interest fund. I think we just should explain what that interest fund is. that
It's
the,
fourth line from the bottom
oh,
on page 2.
okay, Debbie can state it, the article on the warrant is to transfer out of the interest fund? Is that the line?
yes.
Yes.
And instead of interest fund, we just want to spell that out. It's the water department interim loan, line 163. And then I just had one last question on page 3. Toward the end of the Finance Committee section, it said, Bob Mary stated to the board that the salary of 2% was reinstated.
Yeah,
I
That
know.
was last year.
Last year.
Last, okay.
We asked everybody for a cut, and then gave it back to them.
Okay, so maybe just last year. I know that wasn't anything to do with this
okay,
year.
last year.
Okay, yep. Did anybody else have anything else to edit
Well,
on?
No, just if we could be more, just mention more about the train budget than just saying that I stated that the train school helped with the budget, because I didn't, that doesn't really say what I really said,
Okay.
you know, but,
What section, where was that?
Right after.
the last sentence
The
says
last
that
sentence.
that the Triton
Oh,
school helped with
oh.
the budget, helped with our
Okay.
budget, yeah.
By
On
D-
the sense, they helped, but it was only because their the assessments of the towns went down, and that's what that really means, but.
Yeah. So by
So that was just.
reducing their budget, they
Yeah.
helped with our budget. Okay. Okay, anybody else?
Yeah.
Okay, so we won't vote on 4-9. Then on April 10th, the minutes. I didn't have any updates. I thought they were fine.
I didn't either.
Okay. Larry, did you have any questions on it?
No. That was fine with me.
Okay. So do I have a motion that we approve the April 10th minutes? Did you Did you
No.
need to look from your good?
I didn't see a copy of it too.
Oh,
Okay.
You didn't get it?
do you wanna look at these? Yep.
Just quick, just quick. So this is just mostly about the motions for
Yeah.
everything,
So,
take out things.
okay. So do I have a motion that we approve the 4:10:13 minutes?
I'll make a motion.
A
Larry?
second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? No. Approved. Okay. So, next, we're moving into the fiscal year 14 budget. Did anybody want to raise anything about other things before we go into the water department budget discussion?
The only thing I have is, I really don't know what in the world is going on with the community preservation. Is there some way that we can get something on that? Because it looks like it starts out 453,000 is appropriated, less some amount for debt service. And then there's a 198,000 debt service for Brad Street, which brings it down to something. And then 10% of the funds are allocated for certain things, 10% being 15,000, so it's implied that there's 150,000 left over, minus 52,000 for reserves and administration, and then that leaves $97,000, $578 remaining, whatever undesignated funds there are, and then two articles, 15 and 16. One is for 1,000, the other is 135,000. So,
Well, I don't think we don't get their budget, we don't see their entire account balance. The 10% allocations that you see, that's based on what was collected, and by law, they have to allocate those 10%
Right,
to the
understand
different
that.
pieces. But I think, we talked about this last week, that I think
Mhm.
Debbie needs to get us that information. Because if we're recommending, we really need to see the entire picture, not, and I do agree with you, we're not seeing it based on the articles that are presented.
Was Debbie, I can't remember now, was Debbie reaching out to them to get, or to someone to get a summary of what the balances are right now versus what they're spending? I mean, I'm sure
Well, I
they're
think-
just spending what they have. I don't,
Right.
but we could see something
Well, we went through the
showing that.
articles and
Right.
approved them, so I didn't
Right.
think that she was doing it for this year, like for us for right now.
Oh, okay.
But I thought she was doing it,
no,
going
I'm just saying
forward.
that, yes, in the future, or
Yeah.
we'll say, in hindsight, it would be nice to see.
To see it more spelled out and what they have, and then of what they're spending of what they have in their
Right.
budget right now. Yeah,
Basically,
I agree.
it's not like a standard budget where you get appropriation at the beginning of the year and you go through the year and spend the money, and then at
Mhm.
the end, if it's left over, it goes back to free cash.
Yeah,
This one, you get the allocation from the state, which is the matching grant. You get the 3% of the tax base that goes into the account.
Right.
So there are outstanding projects that have been approved that haven't been done yet. So that's a separate account from the current money.
Right. Understand all that. What I say is that somewhere along the line, I'd like to see all of that.
You know, that should be on the report that comes down from the town clerk, from the town accountant.
Okay.
What the balances are and so forth, you know. But as an example, there's a $30,000 set aside for the East End School. And it's been-
3 years, 4 years,
It's been more
5.
than that, because I was on the, I was the chairman of the committee at that point. And it had to be back in the early 2000s,
Okay.
probably 2003, 4, somewhere in that area. And that money's still there, because it never got spent. It was to do a evaluation and a engineering study of the building to see what needed to be done. Well, we knew what needed to be done. It needed to be fixed.
Which building's that, Al?
So,
Which building?
Center School, Town Hall Annex.
The annex.
So, yeah, because if you, I mean, we have, and the information is detailed in
Yeah.
the March 31st appropriations, and they have all the breakdown of all the different
Yeah, okay.
appropriations and what the expenses and what's left over, so, but we don't have it, you know, up-to-date information, but we have it through March.
They did jive most of that.
Right, so it's all of page 13.
So, and what happens with that, say you do that, you take that Center School money, and we hire an engineer to do the project. If it comes in under budget, in other words, we don't spend the 30,000, then that gets rolled back into the Community Preservation Committee, it doesn't go to free cash.
Right,
Right.
it's always within that
Yeah.
same fund.
So it's, you kind of have to think of it as a little bit different than in a standard budget.
Yeah.
You see, Larry,
Yes, I don't see where the, okay.
I think this just shows you what's been appropriated, it doesn't show you the entire unspent money.
Well, the balance
well, it
remaining,
gives
but
you the
it's as
budget,
of
and then it
March.
gives you the balance remaining.
You know, 500,000 is supposedly unspent as of end of March.
But that's for what's been allocated to these different items.
Right.
So I don't know that that's their entire fund.
I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't
Why
know.
wouldn't it be? though?
Well, I mean, it specifically says jewel mill, historical signs, renovation, first floor of town hall. This is all money that's allocated for
Yeah, yeah.
specific purposes. It's not,
Yeah,
But
There should
there's,
be another entry there somewhere under that.
this is Brad Street, principal, Brad Street interest. So
Is
I'm
that a
just
current-
not certain that this is their entire source of funds.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just what's been allocated for
Definitely wasn't
specific
allocated.
purposes.
It's sitting there waiting for it to be
Right.
well, it's a
spent.
current,
Right.
it's a current year. It's a current year budget, you know, from,
But do they
Using-
spend all their money? Do they allocate every cent that they
No.
collect?
No, they
So-
have to set aside the 10%.
10%.
Right.
And that is specifically earmarked for those particular projects. In other words, I think it's,
Open space, affordable housing,
yeah,
preservation of landscaping, buildings, historical buildings.
yeah. And recreation is what they call the free, it's not really a free account, but it's the unreserved account.
so, well, we're not gonna solve it tonight, but, I mean, a lot of the information is here, but it's maybe not the whole picture. I can follow up with Debbie and see,
Yeah, follow up. I mean, I don't think we're gonna run out of money, so.
no.
Right. Now I'll go check into it for my own edification.
But the Brad Street property, is it for 20 years?
I believe so.
So
Then that's
that's-
a bond issue.
That's a bond issue, so that's, that money is, that's where this Brad Street comes out of too, so that's for 20 years, so.
Okay, so, next, we just have the water budget and, the one article that we were questioning to talk about. So what I wanted to do first is just get all the issues on the table, and then we'll go through them one by one and see where, what we agree to. So, what we know from last week, we know we want to talk about the Article 26 from the special town meeting and the amendment that Janet was preparing. And then we also talked last week about the unemployment claims expense, that we voted no on the article for $25,000 added to that line. The budget has $28,000. Maybe there's no discussion on that, but I just want to put that out there. The other issue that people raised last week was the salary increases for the superintendent and business manager. Is it warranted in view of the issues? I have an issue that I'd like to speak to you about the water rates. I know we don't get to vote on the water rates, but I think it's related to the whole budget, so we should at least talk about it. Another issue, or another question that I have is regarding the administrative assistant position, in that it's vacant right now. The personnel study only showed one business person in the offices of the other water departments, so I wanted to talk to you guys about how many, whether we think we need both, I don't know, or whether there's an opportunity to save some expenses there. And then the last issue that I had was the Paul membrane. There's been some discrepancy about how much they really cost. In the meeting of, the informational meeting that the water department had upstairs here last year, the engineer stated specifically, and I reviewed the tape, and Jamie backed me up and reviewed the tape also, she said $100,000. It sounded like $100,000 per membrane. She wasn't exactly
No,
clear on that.
It was, but at one of their meetings, they pointed out that the membranes went from $100,000 each with a 2 to 3 year life to $500,000 with a 7-year life.
On the tape, she said $100,000
Right, but
every
it-
7 years.
Oh,
Then she made a mistake,
That's what Barbara said.
because it should be like 500,000 or something.
That's how it was presented.
Well, I think we need to get a clarification as to, it's possible that the process has been updated. They've changed the membrane. The membranes have been around for quite a while.
Sure.
Supposedly, this new membrane is something that's fairly new, that's on the market, and it may be that that's where the discrepancy comes from. But I think we need to clarify that.
And if I'm remembering watching a water board meeting, and Jim, you go to them, right, most of them. Did the girl mention that this new type of membrane will filter out many more, is the word chemicals or findings than what they initially were looking for? What was,
I believe when Barbara was talking about it, she said that the membrane itself, she was not talking about a previous technology and a new technology. She was talking as an overview that this
one that they're putting in?
technology
Right,
is geared toward flushing out more impurities
right.
than something in the past. She wasn't comparing the original plan with a new idea.
Because I remember by watching that,
Right.
hearing that, and then that, I do believe she says it should be replaced between 5 to 7 years.
Correct.
Okay.
That was at a recent water department?
No, that was probably January.
That was gonna say a month or so ago,
Yeah,
2 months ago.
January. Well, Barbara was in 2 weeks ago, but it wasn't wasn't a discussion of the membrane. But she wasn't comparing something that had been quoted to us with an accelerated technology. She was talking the function of the membrane.
That they are going to use in
Correct.
And
this
always plan
treatment,
to.
Correct.
in this treatment plan.
Yeah. Yep, she wasn't comparing accelerated technology with a previous quote.
Okay, so before we get into any one thing too much more, were there any other issues people want to put on the table about the water department budget? And then we'll just go through the issues one by one.
I think that covers everything.
Any other items?
No, you're good.
Okay. Okay, so let's go back to the top and start with the Article 26. Do we want to go, did you bring an amendment, or do you want to wait to
What
get
I
the-
sent to Debbie was that I basically worded it exactly the same. I didn't have the article from last year, so I wasn't sure of the article number,
Okay,
but it was suggesting that it be funded from wages and whatever the line item,
the wages from the current fiscal year
From the
13 budget.
April 30th town meeting
Yep,
warrant
yep.
to this addition, this
Okay,
item.
okay. So it's instead of reading to transfer 20,000 from line 163 water treatment plant interim loan interest of Article 6, it would be from line whatever it is of wages from the annual town meeting
Right.
to expenses
Yes.
for the purpose. Okay. Okay.
And then the total amount appropriated, I don't know that number because I don't know what, I don't have the warrant from last year.
Okay.
So, I mean, it was, at least talked about I thought the money should come from.
Okay. Okay.
So I don't know if everyone agrees with that.
I agree.
Yeah, that's what we
I
talked
agree.
about, so I
Well, they
think
shouldn't be using it as a kiddie fund for everything, so I think that's more appropriate to be a wage, a salary type
wage.
of thing, you
That's
know, than,
correct. It's a wage.
so.
And Debbie, well, I think we looked at the budget, they had 150,000 as of 3/31, and they're down so many people, so I think they would have plenty of money in that
Mhm.
wage line
And if they
So they might
didn't,
as
they
well
could
use it
come
up.
before us
later.
and
Right.
ask for
Sure.
a transfer of
Yeah,
funds.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so we're good with that, we'll just get the final version written up and we'll approve it at our next meeting, whenever that is, right before the town meeting. Okay. Then next was the unemployment expense in the budget. There was an article for setting aside $25,000 for starting for this year for unemployment claims, and we voted no on that. The budget has 28,000 in it
For next year.
for next year.
So this was, that was on the special, so that was
That
on
was on
June
the
30th this year.
Correct, yeah.
Right, Article 27.
Yeah.
But that is, they didn't change it though. What are you saying, Karen?
I'm just saying, we voted no
Yeah,
for the
but they didn't-
unemployment claim.
So that they didn't go back and agree with us on that?
No, it
So
went to
we're gonna
print,
be-
it just went to print with
Okay.
us
Right.
saying we don't recommend that one.
Okay.
And I just wanna make sure there's no other issue with unemployment,
Now, for any
the
of,
budget on the unemployment
Now,
line.
am I correct in assuming that this 25,000 is to cover any claims of unemployment between now and June 30th?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, because there is nothing right now,
They don't have a line.
they do
don't
not have a line, but they
That's
are
correct.
establishing this line
Mhm.
of
For next
28,000
year.
for next
next
year.
year.
right,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
what
On
was
top of the
stated,
25.
but what was stated previously was that unemployment, in the past, unemployment claims were paid out of the expense line. When it was just kind of a lump sum expense line, so it's
Okay.
not as though they
Haven't
haven't
paid.
paid,
Right.
if they had a claim, they paid it in the past. So, it's just allocating this money, but it would stay allocated to this if we
From the
approve
wage.
this article.
So then it would be 25 and 20,
28.
25 and 28, so now you're
Right.
looking at $53,000.
Right, which we
Right.
think is excessive.
So right now, in the budget, there's 28,000. The town overall had only 12,000, so it seems like that would be sufficient. I don't have any problem myself with the 28,000, but I just want to make sure we're all in agreement with that then, if
I
we
think
voted
the
down to
28
25, but
Is accurate.
Do you think on these types of articles where we're not recommending, we should, one of us should get up and state why we're not recommending as a
Yes.
committee?
Yes, absolutely.
You have to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just exactly what, the conversation you just had,
Mhm.
especially on this one, that when you do the regular town meeting, you'll see that there is $28,000 for July 1st
Mhm.
being appropriated, and this 25,000 is from, whatever the date is, from May, for the
June
next
30th.
45 days to
Right.
cover any claims.
yeah, definitely, for the ones that we're just recommending, we don't really have to say too much, but for the ones that we have any issue with, we should give an explanation.
Okay.
At this point in time, we're tied into the special warrant. Matter of fact, they're right there. Getting ready to
Yeah.
go out. It's gonna be mailed on Friday.
Yeah, well,
And I'm not sure, we're probably very, very close if we're not already by the annual town meeting warrant, because that
Yeah.
has to go to a printer to go into the town report.
Right.
yeah,
So that one's coming up close. The special has to be 2 weeks before the meeting, the annual has to be at least a week before the meeting. So
Ah,
we've got
okay.
that 1 week window, but it's gonna take that long to get the town reports done.
Right.
Well, we
So-
voted on everything.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
thought they both were going to print last Friday,
Right.
actually,
So we
but,
really can't make any, I mean, you've got recommendations on
No.
the floor, and that's what.
Yeah,
we're gonna
right,
do.
right,
that's-
yeah,
Recommendation from the
right.
Now,
floor.
Yep.
why did we mention different things if they didn't modify and change it before, now another week has gone by, so why didn't they, change? They
Because
didn't-
we're just recommending or not
Yeah.
recommending, we can't go
Okay.
back to the
We
board to
can't
tell
force
them to
them.
do something
Yeah.
differently.
Right.
Can't force
okay.
them to do anything.
Mm.
It then goes to, we've given our recommendation or not recommending, and then it's up to the townspeople at the meeting to decide.
Right.
Mhm.
okay, so everybody's good with the 28,000 in the budget for the unemployment claims, okay. Then next, the issue was brought up about the superintendent and business manager salary increases. It's about 12,000 increase for the water superintendent, about $5,000 increase for the business manager. So I open it up to discussion. What are people's thoughts on that?
So, well, as we said earlier, this is the position, not the person holding that position right now. And I think one of the things, and Bob can correct me, but at the selectmen's meeting, and Larry was there, I made it very clear that we're gonna have to try and, I don't wanna say diffuse some problems that can occur at town meeting, okay? And we are here to talk, and I'll make the statement right up at the beginning, once we get through the formalities of a few things. We're here to talk about the FY14 town budget. We're here to talk money. We're not here to talk personnel. That is a violation of the open meeting law. We are not here to talk about procurement of what was bought and how it was bought and who bought it. If that's what people would like to have discussed, then under, I believe it's Article 3, they can instruct
Town officials.
the town officials to whatever they want, to hold a special meeting, to bring all of this, because when you talk personnel, you have to duly notify them, and if you don't, because people are gonna start to, we're not gonna mention names and anything else, because now you're violating the open meeting law.
And personnel issues.
Any personnel issues,
Right.
okay?
That's actually Article 2.
Okay, so, it's a fine line, and I know people want answers, but town meeting is to appropriate the budget for the next fiscal year. And if we don't have that in place for June 30th, we would have to hold another meeting, depending on how we diffuse or however we present all the, like you wanna talk the water rates, the salaries, the other things, so there's a whole issue, and I'm gonna ask Judy Pickett to town council to get up and speak about if we do not pass these water articles, some of them, that we're gonna be in,
Default.
default, and the fine could be over $1,000 a day. So, I mean, you're looking at 45 days, let's say, maybe before you could have another town meeting, so there's $45,000. Have you done any justice to not do X thousand and then have to pay another 45,000 in a penalty clause, because you don't have water rates or stuff in place to start the fiscal year, because there is a payment due, am I right, July 15th?
I believe so.
July 15th or
Right.
July 18th?
15th, I think.
Okay, so, I mean,
Also, it's more appropriate to bring it up at the selectmen's meeting where you have the citizens' query, where.
true, but also
those-
too, but if the people have not been duly notified that you're going to be talking about somebody in particular, you're gonna violate the open meeting.
Well,
So-
right, but I mean,
But bring it to-
that's the forum where you could at least
Absolutely,
discuss
and say, at another meeting, can we
pizza
do?
servers
Under
and
the
stoves
Citizens
and,
query, it's really not a discussion, it's a dialogue between a citizen and the Board of Selectmen. The selectmen
Right.
take no action at that
Right.
point. We don't even discuss it back. We just get to what they're looking for, and then we look into it and bring it back at another meeting that's on an agenda. So
You know,
Right,
Citizens
but I
Query
mean,
says they can come in and say,
that's the opportunity where the citizens tell the selectmen, who are their representatives,
Right.
what their concerns are.
Yes.
And the selectmen can then devote, they have, we'll say, the wherewithal to find these answers than a normal
The
citizen.
selectmen would then look into it, and if it required a
Right.
meeting, that would be posted.
Yeah, but a lot of
duly
times-
posted meeting, et cetera, so that we can
Mhm.
But I
discuss
don't
it.
mean to interrupt, but a lot of times people don't know about these things until
Yes.
they happen, you
Yes.
know, and then by
Right.
then, so I can understand people being upset even though they might not be able to, address it through
Oh,
the
yes.
proper channels with this, because they don't know about it, and then people have busy schedules, they work, they, come home late, they don't have a chance to be involved in every little minutia that's going on in the town. And a lot of times they only know about it when they have these town hall meetings,
Yes,
so that's
right.
why you have that, and the anger comes out then, because that's when people have their voice for the first time.
They
and
feel
hear
that this
about
is
it,
their one time that they can voice something.
Sure.
But,
But getting back to the original topic of the wage increases, I understand you can't speak about someone individually, but I think we could suggest that wages be level funded and that the proposed increases be used to offset the article to pay for the fines to the DEP. Then we're not speaking of anyone individually.
But we're raising the fact that there's this huge issue looming.
I mean, if we,
Yeah.
I go both ways. I mean, I'm not sure that, from a whole financial perspective, I'm not sure that they are huge increases. But on the other hand, from the personnel study, if you're bringing the position up to par to what it should be,
Well,
then that's what
I
this
agree
is
with you.
for.
It is a huge increase, there's no question about that. But the fact of the matter is that that's what a superintendent of a water system is, and that's
Right.
the mid-level.
I think I would have proposed, if it was me, I would have done it over a two-year period instead of just, pushing it all through in one year. That would have been way I would have, but, I'm one person and
See, I disagree,
finance,
because then it would be picking favorites, kind of
no, it's not
thing.
picking favorites. If you just go across the board and you do, a 2-year,
On everyone or
on
just
ev-
this?
on everyone,
Oh.
I'm not singling out anybody. I don't personally think any, I think, people, who work outside there, a lot of people haven't had raises in like 3 or 4 years, and they have, that's what you're gonna be hearing at the meeting, I believe, that kind of talk. So, I mean, when you work for government, right, you get other benefits too that, people out there in the private sector don't get.
Mhm.
So, things kind of balance out too, so that's,
Well, as much as it goes against my grain personally, I think that we do need to be mindful of all of the work that was done on the personnel study. And, if someone retires tomorrow, this is what we would have to pay the next whomever that would come in to fill the slot. So, as much as it goes against my grain, I think that it's warranted. I personally don't like it, but to be consistent with the information that was given.
Now, looking at the personnel study, the superintendent wage across all those towns that were in the study, and some of them were quite wealthy, there was a range of salaries from 72 to 81,000, and the average was 74.8. So this is slightly higher than the average, is what was requested to increase that salary to 75,538. And then on the business manager, the other towns had no business manager. They had only an administrative assistant who was at a lower wage. So that goes back to the other issue that I raised is it necessary to have 2 full-time staff in that
I think their
that
argument,
office?
at the time that they requested the business manager, argument was that they go into monthly billing, so
Yeah.
that increases the workload. The water treatment plant will add a huge workload to the office, keeping track of what's going on there and all of the things that go with it. And that was the argument that they made. That they needed somebody in the office to handle that while the superintendent
Yeah.
was taking care of the outside plant.
Because at the same time, I mean, we heard a couple weeks ago that they've outsourced the billing, so the bills are sent, they're stuffed and printed and sent by an outside company. We also spent $650,000 within the last 2 years redoing the meters to get automated meter readings, and I don't remember ever seeing a savings in the wages from that. I just question if another full-time person is needed in that office.
That's a good question.
I think we should have seen savings from the water meters. Granted, that used to be a twice-a-year thing, but it's 1,800 approximately water meters that someone's manually reading and then having to input that data and do whatever they need to do. It's now computerized, so that should have been a savings. And I know the billing is outsourced, because we just heard that a couple weeks ago. So,
And that was much more expensive than they had estimated the cost to be.
what the
Outsourcing.
Yeah. So I don't know that I'm ready to say just pull it out of the budget, because we don't know all the details, and I don't think we'll have the opportunity to have the water department come in here again.
I think we're at the, pardon the expression, end of the rope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We try to go
We're
much further
past
than we
it.
fall
Knocking
off.
on the door.
Well, it's a recommendation from the floor, so you might be able to get some answers before town meeting.
Mm.
I think from the supplement standpoint, what we're trying to do is get this through, and hopefully, now that we've got the financial team in place,
Yeah.
work on it and fine tune it, if you will.
Yeah.
In the next session. Right now, we're just trying to get to the point where we don't lose the water department.
Yeah.
We need to supply water, so it's one of those issues.
Yeah. So maybe whether or not there need to be 2 full-timers, we can leave that open for now. Just say that's an open question, and we can try to reach out to I don't know when the next meeting
There
is.
is, well, they were hoping to have one Friday night, last night's meeting.
This Friday?
They were hoping, but I
Oh.
haven't received an email about that yet.
Okay.
And Laura's actually very good. If not, it will be, tentatively it was going to be Friday. If not, it will be next Tuesday. Part of the meeting agenda last night was they are intending to post a legal notice that they are going to have a town forum similar to what they had last year for the water treatment plant to answer questions,
Wow.
etc. That was to be voted on and decided last night. There wasn't a meeting, they did not have a quorum. So that is apparently going to be moved forward onto the next one.
Okay.
I know that Laura Hamilton was going to ask Debbie, where it is public, how many weeks that would have to be put in the town common for the legal notice. And where it didn't happen last night, I don't know if there is going to be enough time to sufficiently have it advertised
Typically 7
before
days.
town meeting.
Typically 7 days, but we'd have to
Right.
double check. Sometimes it's 2 weeks also.
Right, and that's where the question was. Laura was not at the non-meeting last night either, so there wasn't that discussion. That was the intent, and I don't know where it goes from here now.
Okay. So possibly a meeting this Friday, but that's to be confirmed. So.
Correct.
But they should have a meeting between now and the town meeting, so maybe we could get some more feedback
Absolutely.
on that. So back to the salary increases. I like Janet's idea of saying, use that money to pay off the fines. What does anybody else think?
Well,
Larry?
then you have to redo some of the articles that are paying off the fines. So are you going to redo those articles?
I don't think you have to
Well, not-
redo it.
not-
I think it just,
It's more the explanation of the fact that we had to pay
So that you
fines
would,
out of other
we'll say later on,
lines.
they would come back with a transfer of funds then from,
no,
well,
this
Not-
total budget just then gets reduced by
Right, right.
the increases.
And just the explanation would be
Mhm.
that because other funding from the other water department funds have needed to be used to pay these fines, we think it's appropriate to reduce those.
well, what you're doing is making those two people pay the fine.
And those funds are already
Essentially.
there. They were appropriated last year because we didn't know when the
Mhm.
state was going to do the permanent bonding. And to be safe, so that we wouldn't have to call another town meeting, we put that money in there for that, to pay that interest. When
Right.
we actually did the bonding. Well, that didn't take place. Now they are going to do it. It's coming up this year, so the money is already appropriated for that. So what they're looking at, and the town treasurer found it for us, they're gonna need whatever we got appropriated in there for that line, is about what it's gonna cost to do the funding, when the state gets to it, and that they're gonna do it fairly soon. So that extra money was just sitting there when we revert back to free cash.
The extra money from 163?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
that interest money.
Yeah,
Right.
That we're taking some of these articles out of.
Right.
Fine money's coming out of that interest.
Right.
And several other things. So that money's already there and appropriated. If we don't
Right.
spend it now, it'll
Right.
go back to free cash.
it would be their free cash
Yes,
for
next
next
year.
year that they could apply toward either the capital requirements or the next year's budget.
Yeah, I mean, it can be
mean, there
used,
could
but
be.
we've got the expenses now this year.
Yeah,
So that's what that's, and the reason, and one of the problems is that it's not the water department that's being fined. It's the town of Rowley.
Right.
But-
That has to pay the fine.
But the article is reimbursing the town for that fine. The water
Yes.
department is reimbursing the town.
Yes,
So I understand the town's paying, but it's coming out of the water rate.
well, it's already out of the water rate.
it's out
It's-
of line 163,
Right,
which was
but it's
already built into the
incorporated,
rate.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's still
Yeah,
part of the water department is paying for it ultimately. I think this just gets back to my earlier comment about, and, you know, I'm not a public employee, so I am subject to merit increases solely. And that's where, that's what is kind of behind my opinion on this, is that, I'm just not sure that the water department has performed a job during the past year that warrants these increases. And
Well-
certainly the wages on line 3, those, even if you take the wages and the overtime and you add them together, that's less than what was appropriated last year, so those are going down. I don't know.
Well, because we don't have as many employees.
right.
But I understand you don't have as many now, but as I understood it, there were open positions to replace those
Not
people.
all of them. We will have less. If you look at some of the other items in there, you'll see that health insurance is down because there's less employees, things like that.
They're reducing by 2.
Okay.
That's why, from my opinion, I said it should be phased in over 2 years, because at least it's very hard to single out certain certain departments and say, well, no, you can't get it, you can get it. The simple answer to this whole thing would have been not to, give big raises like this in one swoop year. Do it over 2 years, would have
We're
been.
not picking out single
Well,
departments and saying you can't help.
I know,
other departments
I agree
can't.
with you, I'm agreeing with you, I'm saying you can't do that, it would be very
Well, I
difficult to
agree,
do
We're not
that.
trying to do that, and we're not trying to do it here. What we're trying to do is get the position, to get the employee.
Right, I know
Employee's
that,
gone.
but you can't, the
But get the
employee is in
employee.
the position, so it's kinda like you can't ignore that either, you know what
Well,
I'm saying? It's
we
like
don't-
if you buy a car that's a 2008, but it's a junk box, and you say, well, it's a 2008, so I gotta pay 25,000 for it. Well, it might only be worth 15,000, so, you know.
But now you're
I mean,
putting on the employee
You're looking
again,
at the
Peter. We
person.
don't wanna
I
do
know,
that.
but that's why I'm
You're telling me
saying,
the employee's a junk car, and that's not
no,
true.
but I'm saying that it should have been like phased in over a couple of years, so when they had been such a big, because some of the people maybe
Well-
don't deserve it and some of them do.
But when
And
you
what are
look
you
back
gonna-
at it, Peter, the fact of the matter, he was working for less money than most other people are making. It's the other way around. It's a two-way street. He's been working for years with not making enough money. So now we try to bring him up to where the position should be, not the employee. The position should be, and that's what you wind up with.
Well, I don't know.
So I mean,
I don't, people aren't, I'm not gonna, wanna come across really bad here, but, people who have been in here for years, people who have the top level positions in the town, maybe it's the people, the underlings are the ones that leave, they come in to get the experience, but the ones that have been here, that have been, even if you, as you say, underpaid, they still been here for a long time, so they weren't in any great rush to really leave, and
I can tell you
there's a
what-
lot to be said about when you can work in the town that you live in, because that's worth something too, find money wise, I mean, I have to commute into Boston, so would I take $10,000 or $15,000 less to not have to commute into Boston, to have to, if I could get a job in the town? So, I mean, there's different ways of looking at different things,
well,
and,
we can go on for the next
and,
3 hours here and discuss this one, Peter.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, I know.
The fact of the matter is, we're funding the position
I know.
to where it should be funded. That's the bottom line.
Mhm.
Janet mentioned it. What if
Yeah.
he walks out tomorrow? I mean,
Yeah.
I know what I would do if I was offered to bring me up to where the rest of the world should be.
Mhm.
I would walk out tomorrow.
Yeah.
And now, that creates another issue. Because now you're not gonna find anybody to come in and take it for the lower rate. Because we're at mid-level as it is.
Yeah.
You have to be licensed. The town runs on that license.
Right.
So why would I wanna come in for less money? It's a
Oh.
practical thing. It's gonna be my 2008 that's not a clunker.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Okay.
it's just, I understand what you're saying, and I think what we need to do is what we're trying to do, we're working on two different things here. We're working on the water department, which we don't have any trust in at this point. But we're also trying to bring the personnel of the whole town up to a reasonable area.
Right.
So we're confusing the two issues.
Well, can I ask a question
Yep.
to your earlier comment about how if an employee stepped away, and resigned or retired or whatever, why are we tied to that, to what that person was making? If we can't fill the position, there is money within that could be transferred to fund wages.
Is there money there to transfer?
Well,
We don't know what their operation's gonna be this year. We've cut it considerably from what it was last year. And we keep-
They have
we
that
keep saying-
interim, they have
What
that
was-
line 163 that will still have a lot of money.
I
in it.
But they
think what
also have
Janet
capital.
is, I think what Janet is saying is that if the person, we'll say the water superintendent left, okay, would you advertise at the $64,000 rate for that position or the
It
$75,000?
would probably be a range.
A range.
It would be a range.
Right.
Right.
But the range would have to reach the 74,000,
Right.
because you're not,
So-
you're really not
But
gonna
you
find
only
anybody.
give that to like someone that was really excellent, not just
Well-
anybody off the,
You give that to somebody that's qualified.
That's
Qualified,
worthy
yeah,
of
but,
it, right.
We don't know if he's excellent or not excellent.
well,
Right.
Well, we
but
know.
find
if
that
they
out
have a
Well,
good
he's
resume, if they have a
qualified.
strong resume, you would give, you don't give the max salary to somebody unless they, my opinion, unless they have a very strong resume, and-
well, unless you offer it twice
And,
and no one accepts, and then the
yeah.
third person, you're like, okay, gotta go higher.
But where
but-
do we stand then?
But we do have, money was transferred to a capital account to kind of, for emergencies or things. I mean, there is money that's not specifically allocated for a wage or an expense.
Or they could come, last year they came to the finance committee after the town meeting and we approved a transfer from another loan line that they weren't using to,
Right, and that's,
expenses,
that's the
so-
issue, Karen, is it's a loan line.
Uh-huh.
Okay, it's not an expense line or a capital line that you're transferring money out of.
Yeah.
As they've said to us at our meetings, one water break can go up to $100,000. And we had one out on Havel Street about a year ago. Huge one. So those are the things you put the capital account in for. Those unforeseen emergency situations.
Oh, right, so
So we can't
yeah.
sit here and say, we're gonna just transfer money and we
No.
take it out of that account, because that's really not what that account is there for.
But wasn't it 370 plus thousand that was
Well,
put into?
600,000, we were thinking about a $500,000 expense for the,
Yeah, 344.
For free cash that we put into,
344 free cash. that
went
we-
into
we
a
thought we
capital
should put into
account.
the
membrane.
capital
We were
account.
trying to put that money aside for the
That's
membrane,
right.
when they were
Right.
telling us there were $500,000.
And we had talked about future years, making sure the budget had potentially 100,000 in it specifically.
Each year.
Each year.
Right.
But you cannot, you should not, and I say you can, you can do anything you want, but you should not be running your system, your normal everyday operation off of that account.
I agree with that. I'm just tying it back to our original discussion on salaries. And if,
For 1 year, if you need 10,000, this seems to be a lot of money in the budget, I think.
I think it's just a general question, can it be moved? And I think the answer is yes, it could be. If the position became vacant and you were not able to fill it based on the current rates, current salaries.
It'd be nice to find out if, what the water department has had for, money that would be left over, every year, for the last 5 years, to know, if where that money's going, if they're using some of it to build on the budget for the next year and for the year after that, because based on what's happened, it seems like some of that stuff might have been going on, and we don't know.
I don't think we're
Well,
gonna.
obviously, last
We
year we
don't
had to
know.
make a transfer because there was 70,000 in the hole. And then we saw this year there was at least 40,000 over because they spent it the wrong way. So there is some hanky-panky going on here, there's no question about that. But what we're trying to do now is, with the town's cooperation and all of the town officials that kind of handle these things, put a budget together that looks realistic, that's going to work, maintain the water department, and we see where we stand next year, and maybe hopefully make some more adjustments to it and get it to where it belongs. And that's the goal of the committee, the financial team, to get to that point. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to do it. The budget season gets here and we have to put things together. And we didn't have enough time to really fine-tune it. But hopefully we've got to the point where we can have a starting place to start and then go forward and work on it in the next couple of years and get it to where it belongs.
Well, I think the fiscal team has done a fine job. I think this is the 6th version, if I'm not mistaken.
6th or 7th.
Yeah, of the water. It started off much higher than it is now. So they did a great job controlling expenses and negating some expenses. And I think what we're seeing is a little bit of sticker shock. And the reason that we are is that there's more information available to us now, where the money's going instead of just wages, a total, expenses, a total. So I think that may be part of the sticker shock, along with the sticker shock of paying for the
The
treatment
sticker
plans.
shock is that their budgets, everything's going up 35-40% every year. I mean,
Yeah.
so we have to be able to
Right,
monitor real closely.
right.
Why is it that the indirect costs changed? There's nothing here that I see. It went down about 10,000. That's good, but what happened?
Well, we took categories. One of them is what you discussed tonight, is the unemployment insurance.
So that was out of indirect costs?
That was always listed under expenses. So that expense line is that amount of money more than it should have been. So we've broken out these categories. There's many more categories here than in the past
Absolutely.
years. And that was
Or
one of the
maybe-
reasons. We wanted to see where the money was actually going.
So that came out of indirect costs?
I don't know what it came out of.
They
but,
said they used to pay it out of expenses, but we never really saw how much they were
So-
paying for it. They might not have really had to have that expense,
Exactly. I
but they
mean,
would have.
Right now, it's our best guess. We have
Right.
people that have resigned. They may, and probably will, apply for unemployment.
I would think
So we
if
need
they
to have it
resigned,
covered.
they couldn't, but
They can.
they can.
Oh, absolutely.
If
After-
if you
after a
resign
month.
voluntarily, you can,
I think it's after 4 weeks you can collect.
You better believe
Right.
it.
You sure can.
Wasn't the total $93,000 for the non-union that was basically what the HRS came up with, that
Yes.
we would be paying for the wages,
Yes, it
of,
is.
of which this is included in it? Right?
No, the
Well,
no,
HRS
that's right,
was
it wouldn't be.
non-union.
No.
That's non-union.
HRS is non-union.
I mean, we've had temporary cemetery workers, summer workers, who have been laid off in the fall, and you don't have to cut the grass anymore, apply and we were awarded.
Even though they're
Unemployment.
seasonal employees, as they're
Seasonal
called.
employees,
Right.
yes. They get their unemployment.
Right.
And the
Really?
town has to pay. We've fought it
hmm
at state level, and they say, no, you gotta pay, and we pay it.
that's crazy.
We don't like to pay it,
Yeah.
believe me, we
Yeah.
don't, but it happens, so.
Yeah. So, well, I don't want to vote this budget tonight because I would like to hear more about the administrative assistant position, and why didn't we see any savings in the office from the water meters being automated, the billing being outsourced? Is this now the opportune moment? We don't have to lay anybody off, they've retired. Can there be any savings in that position? So I'd like to, so why don't we table the talk about salary increase, well, the budget items here, unless anybody wanted to have any last say on anything. But I would like to talk about the water rates. And just because I would like to understand them better or have a better feeling about what they look like. Sorry, I have 2 extra copies if you want to follow.
You got one already?
Oh, I think I do.
You want, I don't know, I don't.
So, is that, okay. Okay, now I've lost mine. Here we go. So I was just looking at last year's versus this year's, and when we first met with the water department 2 meetings ago here at the finance committee, they talked about there hadn't been much shift in usage, even though the rates went up. They didn't see a lot of people move toward wells. They didn't see any huge change. Then 2 weeks ago, I brought up the fact that some of the numbers in the tiers were quite different. And the water department said that that's because last year's rate sheet was a total guess. And I just don't feel good about the numbers that we're seeing. And I just kind of wonder how they come up with these numbers. So these 2 sheets are last year's rate sheet and then this year's rate sheet. We already saw this year's, but I just made a copy. So the big change is last year, we had the bulk of the usage was in tier 2. And then this year, a lot of that is shifting up to tier 1. And if that's valid, then it's valid. I'm just confused because in one meeting they said there really wasn't that great of a change in usage. And then this sheet would show that there was. And then we were told last year's sheets for calculating these rates were guesses, and that this year's were actual. But some of the numbers are so different, and then some of the numbers are exactly the same, like tier 2, 0 to 4K, 1,083,154 in the 0 to 4K tier 2. Last year it was the same exact number. Tier 3, last year, 0 to 4K, 190,284. It's exactly the same this year. Tier 3 last year, 36 and up, 190,284. It's the exact same number on this year's sheet. So it's just strange the way these numbers are moving. I would think all the numbers would be slightly different, but they would not be drastically different. And it just makes me think someone's just plugging numbers here to come up to this total. And my main point is I just think we don't want the rates to be raised a penny more than they need to be raised.
But may
And
I
I'm
ask,
really
may I
not.
just jump in now?
Yep.
These are just, this is just the total usage. It doesn't have the flip side is that you're not seeing part of the equation of where the costs and expenses are. So I think that's why the rates, not knowing, but just looking by this, I think that's why they've gone up significantly, because the expenses have gone up significantly. They've gone up about 30%. This is the usage is going to be comparable, but the side that we don't see here is what the actual expenses are.
Well,
And so that's why, the numbers and the rates are higher for that.
well, no, I mean, the rate sheet is showing how they're coming to their anticipated budget. So the budget last year was almost 1.6 million.
Yeah. And what's it this year?
This year, it's 2.
So that, what's the
2.1
difference?
million.
What's the difference? About 30% or so, 35%. So if you take that and you extrapolate, look at the rate numbers.
The bottom
Yeah,
sheet, the
from,
scratch, that was just my calculating.
But
of-
I'm just saying, I bet you it is the expenses that, from last year to this year.
Oh,
that
they definitely
push the
have to make
numbers
more
up
money.
from,
Oh, definitely, they have to make more
uh,
money this year. I'm just wondering if they're showing so many people in the lower tier, if that's creating a cushion. I think that would, if that's not valid, that would create a cushion of money.
Yeah, because it's increased,
below.
tier 1
And-
increased more than double, closer to
It's-
3 times.
What are you looking at now? I'm sorry.
The number of
Back page,
accounts
the back page.
on fiscal year 13, the number of accounts in tier 1 was 637 accounts.
Mm-hmm.
This
This year.
year, it's 1,500. So that's saying that 1,500 houses in town now are only using 4,000 or less gallons per month. Whereas last year, that number was only 637.
Yeah, I don't know how she came up with that number, but I'm just saying, I know
But,
that the expenses, would
Thank you,
count
John.
for.
Just, if you set another meeting, you need me again, just send me an email or let Debbie call me and I'll come again. All
Okay.
right?
Good night.
Okay, Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
She did discuss this briefly in a
Okay.
meeting, and she said that according to the research that she did, these are actual real numbers, that 1,500 of the households use this. 38 large businesses use that, and then the very large households and the small business use the ones in the center. According to what she said, that was a real number based on her research.
Just looks so strange to me.
Especially when the numbers are identical.
Right.
Some are exactly
Right,
the
I
same as
agree.
last year, and then others are drastically different.
Yeah, I agree.
And again, we don't get to vote on these, it's only the water board. But I just would want to impress upon them, I think they should be careful to not raise the rates any higher than they need
Oh,
to.
absolutely agreed.
So,
I don't have my calculator here, but if you take the difference between the expenses from last year to this year, it's pretty significant, and it has to be spread out, it has to be accounted for in these numbers. The usage overall, I don't think went up that much if you take the total. It just, this the way that she allocated it here. But if I'm just taking the total, I'm just gonna look at absolute numbers here and take the total of the usage and the total expenses last year versus this year and take the difference. I think that would account for the increase in the rate from 11.25
Well, no,
to 14.91.
I understand that they need to make more
No.
money, so that's why the fiscal year 14, they're trying to come to this 2 million figure. But I'm just wondering if they're gonna be over that, because I'm questioning whether they really do have now 1,500 accounts only in the tier 1.
Right, so if tier 2, if that 241 households comes closer to 1,000, they're gonna take in a lot more money than they've budgeted here. And 1,000 being what they had last year for households in the tier 2.
But how do you know she hasn't figured that out by multiplying the rate times their usage to come up with the total in the budget? You're saying that she,
No,
you don't
It's
think,
just looking at fiscal year 13, these numbers, and tier 1 versus, and tier 2 versus
Yeah.
fiscal year 14, tier 1, tier 2. They've flipped. They used to be the majority was in tier 2 last year. Now they're showing everybody, not everybody, they're showing a lot more in tier 1, which in this calculation spreadsheet is going to show a lower total. It's going to come to a lower figure. But if last year's breakdown was fairly accurate, and I think from what she's shown us of where they're at and what they're projecting to bring in this year, it was pretty accurate.
when last
Even
year?
Yes.
Because I don't think that's what Laura said at the meeting. She was saying that her numbers, she says this year is the year they're gonna have accurate, right?
She had said last
So-
year's rate calculations were a guess.
Right.
But they were a pretty good guess because they're bringing in this year, they're projected to bring in pretty close to the budgeted amount. So I think it's just something, I mean, that I'd like to bring back to them. I don't know if that's something in the next meeting. I know you said they've already raised it, but if they, and I don't know, I'd be interested in seeing more backup to what if they have, without mounds of paper, if they have something showing more detail, I don't know.
Then that's something that's outside the warrants, so I mean, it's, you certainly have a right to ask those questions.
Actually, if you look at their draft 5 that I had from last week,
Okay.
I think if you, this page here,
Oh, okay.
where it talks about what was estimated for their rates,
Yep.
was 1.5 million, but projected June 30th is 1.476717. So it does appear as though they are slightly below what their projection.
But it's only about
It's not much.
54,000.
Yeah.
It's not very much. So, okay.
But I do think it's good questions.
Okay. So, then we sort of talked about the polymembrane, the 500,000 versus the 100,000. So we
I
both
will
heard the
absolutely
100,000.
address
Where
that,
did you
yeah.
hear the 500,000 for more years of guarantee?
When they made their presentation here,
I don't remember that.
that, and then also at one of their meetings.
Yeah,
It
that
was-
number's been brought up
Right,
more than
it's-
once at meetings.
It's pretty well solid,
Mhm.
and in fact, when we were correcting the minutes from the 50,000 to the 500,000, Laura agreed that it was the 500,000 for 7 years.
I've definitely heard the 500,000, but I haven't heard an explanation for why it was 100,000 last year, and then it went up. But do you?
The only thing that I remember from one of the water board meetings was that it went from 100,000 with only a 2 to 3 year lifetime versus 500,000 with a 7 to 10 year. Actually, it was like 5 to 7, and then it was increased 7 to 10 years for the lifetime. And
But then that contradicts what was said by the engineer at the informational meeting last year, because she said 7 years.
well, but that was last year.
Yeah.
You
But
know,
it's
as
the-
of January, they were still going with the 100,000 in the 2 to 3 years, and
But she said
But-
100,000 for
100 for
7
7.
years.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of the meeting, she talked about why they needed the 3.3 million more. And some of that cost was engineering costs, because they had to redo a few things, including they had to re-engineer for a new design of the membrane. So they seemed to be really on top of the membrane and on top of what they needed. And then later in the meeting, someone asked her specifically about the cost, and she said it's $100,000 for over 7 years,
Right. I
and
mean,
had to be replaced every 7 years. So
it could be. I'm very uncomfortable with us being the only municipality that has this membrane and
Right.
only one supplier.
yeah.
I mean, we're
In such a small customer base.
yes.
I agree.
So I guess that's just a question also.
I will address that.
Okay. So I think we're done for now discussing issues with the water budget. What I'd like to do, well, we can just. Is that my agenda? Did anybody have any other updates they wanted to bring about their liaisons to the committees and departments?
I did ask the 2 questions of the water department. Where did I put my note? On the back of this. One of the questions that you asked that I present is if we are going to end up in the same situation next year, that we may have to adjust the business manager's wages in case of an emergency. And the question that I asked was, does Laura, the business manager, still have superintendent authority in his absence for signing, etc.? The explanation I got is that it was kind of a perfect storm of a lot of situations where John was not out and there were personnel people, union people, that they had to have a non-union person overseeing and getting involved in. So they don't think it should happen again. That was the answer that I got. So I still don't know if she has the superintendent authority or not. And then the second one is if she has looked into the State Supply Depot for acquiring the file cabinets that she had requested. And the business manager said that she looked at the website and was having some difficulty with it, but she is going to continue to look on that route. Okay.
Thank you. So next on the agenda is just to discuss a FinCom representative on the Personnel Board. And Debbie included an excerpt in the package. The Personnel Advisory Committee shall be comprised of the Chairman of the Board of Selectmen or another designated selectman, the Chairman of the Finance Committee or another designated member of the Finance Committee, and a third member appointed by the Board of Selectmen. So, I'm happy to be the representative for now.
I'll
Somebody-
second the
I think that's a
motion.
great idea.
Okay.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah, that's great.
All right.
Third it.
All in favor, aye?
Okay, for Linda, who made the motion? Who's making the motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Jamie, who seconds?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Who serves on it now? Since this
It was
the-
Jack
Jack.
Demento, so
Okay.
this is in his absence, just to
Okay.
fill in to have our group represented. So, so then before we adjourn, for the next meeting, I think one more meeting would, hopefully a quick meeting would take care of it once we have some more feedback. I'm gonna be out of town next week, so I'm proposing May 1st. It's 2 weeks from tonight, 7:15.
What day is that, Wednesday?
It's a Wednesday, yep. And then the town meeting is the following Monday. Then whatever we talk about will be more fresh on our minds anyway.
Right.
So, but I don't see a need to meet before, I mean, I'm gonna be out of town myself, but.
I'm
I
gonna be
think
away
we're
next week also,
pretty-
so I don't think you'd get a.
Okay,
quorum.
so looks,
May 1st it is.
okay.
7:15?
So, great, 7:15.
I will email you as soon as I find out when the next water meeting is.
Okay, that'd be
And then
great.
when they have the big town one, I'll make sure that you get that information as
That-
well.
That would be great if we do that. So do I have what time is it? 9 o'clock. Do I have a motion that we adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Okay, Janet. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Mary? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yay.